Okay, first years, just wanted to do a quick correction of the work I posted for you yesterday to get done. I'm going to run through corrections on most of the problems that we had. I'd asked you to run through. So we're on page 97 of our textbook and we're doing questions 1 to 3. So first one is question 1. I asked about mixing paint to make orange paint, and it's a mix of red and yellow. It says that there's 3 parts yellow paint to 1 part red. So to write down the ratio, we've got 3 parts yellow to 1 part red. So for every 1 part of red paint, you have to have 3 times as much yellow paint. And you can see that relationship in the table, and you can see it here, 3 is to 1. So you can see that there. And in part B, it's asking you to match that. So you can see there has to be 3 times as much yellow paint as there is red paint. So we're going to use that ratio to match it up all the way along the rest of this table. So you can see in the first one it says 3 is to 1, like we know, and again then you just keep moving up and see if you've got 5 parts red, how many parts yellow that we need to have. Again, it has to be 3 times as much as the red paint. So we do 5 times 3 in that case, and we're going to have 15 is to 5. So they're the same ratio. 3 is to 1 is the same as 15 is to 5. You've got the same ratio of yellow to red. It's just different amounts. So in the next one then you've got 6 parts yellow, and that has to be 3 times as much as the amount of red. So we divide by 3 in this case and you end up with 2. So we've got 6 is to 2, and then we can just continue on that way. 8 is to what? We multiply by 3 in this case to get 24. In the next one, it's going to be 9 is to 3. In the next one, it's going to be 12 is to 36. 3 times as much again, and multiply by 3. And in the last one, you've got 15 parts yellow, which means you would have 5 parts red. Okay, so that's the same there. So that's question 1 done. Question 2, you can see we're asked to put these ratios in their simplest form. So most of the time you want to try and get your answer with something is to 1. So as I said, you want your answer to look like that. Maybe I'll write x is to 1. So usually a number is to 1. If you can't get 1, you want to try and get the smallest number possible. So we usually try and divide by the biggest number that we can. So we divide by a number that goes into both values, and we go from there. So question 2, again, I've skipped a couple, but the ones that I wanted to make sure that we're correct on, I've written out here. So part A, you've got 4 is to 20. So I know that 4 goes into 4, obviously, and 4 goes into 20 as well. So I divide in by 4, and I do 4 divided by 4 give me to 1, and 20 divided by 4 will give me 5. So you can see I've divided straight in by the biggest number I can. If you get a little bit stuck, you can divide by a smaller number. I'll show you exactly how to do that now. You can see here in the next one, you've got 20 is to 30. And we might not recognise that 10 goes into both, but I know that 2 goes into both, for example, or 5 goes into both, for example. So you can imagine if I divide in by 2 to start off, that would end up being 10 is to 15, because I've divided each by 2. And then we might see that 5 goes into both of those, so I can divide in by 5, and I'd end up with 2 is to 3. So even if you don't get it in one step like we did in part A, you can do it in a couple of steps and keep getting to the lowest numbers that we can. So you can see I divided by 2 and then divided by 5, and that would be the same as dividing by 10 straight away, wouldn't it? Because you go 20 divided by 10 would give me 2, and 30 divided by 10 would give me 3. So same idea there. Next one, part E, I've got 18 is to 12. I know 6 goes into both of those, so I'm going to divide that in. 18 divided by 6 gives me 3, and 12 divided by 6 gives me 2. So you can see almost the same as the ratio in part C, just they flipped the other way around. Part G, I've got 3 numbers that I have to try and divide in. No different, just a little bit trickier because we have to think about 3 numbers instead of 2. And again, the biggest number that goes into all of that goes into all of those numbers is 2, because 2 goes into 2, 2 goes into 4, and 2 goes into 8. So if I divide each of these by 2, I'll end up with my ratio. 4 is to 2 is to 1. And again, once you have a 1 in there, you know that that's definitely the smallest value. In the couple of examples like we've done here, 3 is to 2 and 2 is to 3, you don't have a 1 in there. But again, 2 is a very small number, 3 is a very small number. So you can recognise that we can't get any lower than that, especially when this number doesn't go into that number evenly, or vice versa, that number doesn't go into that number evenly. If we have a 1, we know that we're good, and it's definitely the last step. If we have a 2 or a 3 or a 5, you might need to do an extra division, but sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. Part H, 12 is to 18 is to 30. Again, 6 goes into each of those, so I'm going to divide each number by 6. So we end up with 2 is to 3 is to 5. And again, that's the smallest values I can get there, because 2 doesn't go into 3, so I can't do any more division, and 2 doesn't go into 5, so I can't do any more division. And finally then I've got 30, 15 and 5. 5 goes into each of those 3, so I'm going to divide by 5, and you end up with 6 is to 3 is to 1. So that's question 2 done. Then finally, the last question asked about expressing numbers, expressing these fractions in their simplest whole number form. So in the previous question we were dividing to get the number down. In this case, we're going to have to multiply to get the number up to whole number values. So what we need to do in this case is we need to multiply by a number that's going to give us a whole number answer. So usually we'll get our common denominator and we'll multiply right across. So in this case, I've got a quarter and I've got a half. If I multiply each of those by 4, I'll definitely get a whole number. So I do 4 multiplied by a quarter will give me 4 over 4. And 4 multiplied by half will give me 4 over 2. And then I can divide those in to get a whole number. 4 over 4 gives me 1, and 4 over 2 gives me 2. So I've got whole number answers then. Next one, I've got 5 and I've got 3. Now 3 doesn't go into 5, so I can't use 5. So I have to think of a number that 5 and 3 will both go into, and in this case I'm going to use 15. So I multiply each of these by 15. So that becomes 15 over 5, and that becomes 15 over 3. And then I just divide those in to get my whole number answer, and that's going to be 3 is to 5. Next one, I've got 6 and 5. The number that they both go into is 30. So I do 30 multiplied by 1 over 6 gives me 30 over 6. 30 multiplied by 1 over 5 gives me 30 over 5. And then I divide that in. 30 divided by 6 gives me 5. 30 divided by 5 gives me 6. And you can see my ratio then is 5 is to 6. And the last one here, part D, same idea. We've got 3 numbers, so we have to be a little bit more careful, but shouldn't be an issue. So again, 2 and 4 and 6. I'm going to use the number 12, because 12, 2 and 4 and 6 all go into 12 evenly. So if I multiply each of these fractions by 12, I'll end up with whole numbers in my ratio. So I end up with 12 over 2 when I multiply, 12 over 4, and 12 over 6. And then I do quick divisions to finish that off. 6 is to 3 is to 2. And that's my lowest ratio I can get for there. So that's all our corrections. Hopefully you'll be able to use those to attempt the next few. Thank you.